Hi everyone. We're here today, Brett and I, to talk a little bit about Drone Warrior, our new book that's just out. It's an elite soldier's inside account of the hunt for America's most dangerous enemies. We're gonna take some questions. We're gonna sign some books. We're gonna talk a little bit about the book. If you want to go to buydronewarrior.com, you can buy the book there. Immediately goes into a cart, and you're off to the races. I guess we wanted to sort of kick it off by telling you a little bit about us, because that's not in the book, how we met. It goes back to Brett and I were in Somalia about
2014.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a number of years ago, and we both flew in at the same time into Mogadishu. War was going on there, and Brett was in town to sort of help out some of the troops there that were trying to figure out how to fight back the terrorists encroaching in on Mogadishu.
Al-Shabaab, yeah.
And so Brett and I got in a conversation. We struck up a friendship there. Didn't really know anything about Brett. Just assumed that he was a part of, sort of what the other soldiers there were. Many of them were special forces from different parts of the world. I just assumed, well, Brett, that's what Brett was too. Guy went and kicked down doors, but. I got home and I was sort of thinking about what I wanted to write my next book about, and I've been really interested in drones. And drones such an interesting world because it's so shrouded, at least the military side, is so shrouded in secrecy. You don't really know a whole lot of what's going on. These things are up in the air. They're unmanned. They're watching different parts of the world. They're chasing bad guys. You hear all the press accounts of the civilians that are killed, but you don't really get a whole lot of texture of what's going on. And so I thought it would be an interesting place to sort of look at for a possible book. And so the first person, one of the first people I called up was Brett, and I just thought Brett would probably know somebody who would help me into this world. And so I got Brett on the phone. We started talking, and Brett says, well, actually, that's all I used to do is drones. And so we struck up this conversation about drones, and I started trying to convince him to work on a book. And at first he was reluctant, but he eventually changed his mind. Brett, why'd you change your mind?
Well, I think for me it was just a bit of an out-of-body experience to kind of talk about this world, and you're kind of taught the opposite, and so it was weird to do that. But for me, a couple things changed my mind. One, the fact that when I came to you, I said, if for starters, if we were even able to write something at all, we're going to make sure we take it through the right vetting process with the Department of Defense and make sure that they're comfortable with some of the things that we're talking about here, and that way, we're not unveiling any secrets that they wouldn't be comfortable with getting out there. And then the second thing was, for me, what I think really did it when I gave you a call and I just said, you know what, let's write this book, is I'll never forget I was driving past the headquarters of the CIA just outside of Washington, D.C., and I driving right past, and I see these massive amounts of people. They're all carrying these fake Predator drones. They're hoisting them on their back. They're, holding all these massive signs, and they're protesting against the drone program. So some of the signs read, when a drone's in the sky, a child dies. And it really kind of struck a chord with me because you had all these people that had this hatred for a technology that was actually saving lives, and for somebody that's been behind it and really seen the incredible people that work behind the scenes to save American lives. For me, it was a no-brainer. It's we got to tell the story, we got to tell it right, and we got to make sure that the people know that the folks behind these programs are doing the right thing.
And it wasn't a very easy book to write either. I mean, it was incredibly difficult because you're dealing with so much classified information, information that you have, in your head that you can't disclose. And if you did disclose it, it'd be A, illegal, and B, it would compromise all kinds of, covert missions that are probably still going on today. So, talking about this book must have been, hard because, on the one hand, we want to tell a great story. And on the other hand, you got to work to keep those secrets in place.
Yeah, of course. And that's, we banged our heads against the wall because what the U.S. government had said was supposed to be a 90-day process, right, to get the book vetted and approved, ended up turning into a 22-month excursion. But in the end, it's the right thing to do, and I'm glad we were able to tell the story. And I was really surprised, I think, as much as you were, is how much they left in.
Yeah, I was really worried when we finally put the book together. Brett had a pretty good sense of what he could include, but I was a little skeptical. I was worried because as a journalist, I don't worry about what the government is going to say. You can't publish this. You can publish that. We have our lawyers. We have our ethics people that make those kinds of decisions. So I've never really been in a situation where you have to hand a book over, hand a story over, and say, what's okay to tell, the people about. So I was worried that we'd written this 200-300 page book, and 90% of it was going to be gutted, or 60% of it was going to be gutted, or a meaningful amount of it was going to be gutted, so we wouldn't have a story to tell anymore. And so as they said it was going to be done in 30 days, 30 days passed, that it was going to be done in 60 days, 60 days passed, months passed, and I'm thinking to myself, we're not going to have a book by the end of this. And it took, I think it was
22 months.
22 months.
After it was all said and done. But and it's a good thing that we finally got to this point. But we got to sign some books. That's what we're here for.
Let's do that.
Right?
We
got to sign some books. Yep. We want to talk to some folks that are on the line, and we want to hear from the people that may have some other questions for us. And obviously this is a very military centric book, but really what I do all day long is I work with consumer drones and commercial drones, and so I'd love to get some questions on that.
Actually, before you start, one thing that you might want to talk a little bit about is just sort of describing the difference between a pilot, a drone pilot, and what you do.
Right.
Just so people understand that the drone pilot is this thing, and what you did was distinctly different.
Right, and I think there's a misconception when you got a book that says drone warrior, that I was some guy, some pilot or an operator operating these drone cameras and flying them around. But that wasn't the case, and that's why the story's a bit different. I was the guy that actually utilized the benefits of drone technology and had the pilots flying for missions or going after individuals that I wanted to look for. And so I was the analyst, a part of that. I wasn't the operator, tough guy type scenario. I was the intelligence guy that was there to put all the pieces together to go and hunt down some of our nation's enemies. And it was a wild and incredible job. And the guys on the ground that were doing these missions after we found these people, I mean, they're some of the most fantastic people in the military. I mean, especially the Green Beret, Navy SEAL type folks out there. I mean, these guys are practically superhuman with what they do. And so so my job again was primarily more the analysis piece of it.
But you had drone pilot was listening to you, and you were directing the show essentially. You were
right.
telling the drone pilot where to place the drone in the air, what to look at, where to go next. You were talking to intelligence folks around you, who were looking at various databases, looking at various intelligences that came through as you tracked the bad guys down. You put these networks together and dismantle them piece by piece.
Right. I mean, we were essentially detectives at a doctorate level, right? We're putting these different pieces together, and drones allowed us to find that missing gap, find that missing piece that we needed to pinpoint these individuals to a particular place on the map. And so it's a lot of multitasking. It's a lot of looking and analyzing information and reports and talking to folks to try and find that missing piece of information that you may need to go after somebody. And there's a lot of people involved. Nothing I did was done alone. And this story is about a lot of the other folks that were there with me that were fighting these wars.
Just to remind you, you can buy this book at buydronewarrior.com. You can also submit questions live online on Facebook, and we'll be answering them. So how about we take a question here. Let's see. In hindsight, John from Temple, Pennsylvania says, in hindsight, with all the missions you have done and everything you've witnessed, is there anything you would do different, such as a career choice with special ops, for example?
For me, I absolutely loved what I did. I mean, and it's a good question, John, because I become very reminiscent. I think about the times that I was doing these missions, and a part of me misses it. I mean, even though I've left that and I made the decision to leave that work, and I don't regret anything I did, and I don't, the men and women that are behind these types of things are just some of the most incredible people on earth and some of the smartest minds in the business of war. And I wouldn't, I wouldn't have, not done that for a minute. Going back and looking at it, it was just a great time to be a part of this capability and to see it, evolve, see drones evolve in such a way that they're now in every facet of what the military does, and it was just a really cool experience.
Well, actually, speaking of regrets, there's another question here from Patrick of Portland, Oregon, and it sort of gets to something else I think that we talk about in the book. His question is, do you have any regrets? How is the war against ISIS, and are we winning the war? And I think, I would argue that maybe you might have one regret, which is that you didn't get Baghdadi, Abu Baghdadi. He was somebody that you had hunted for a long time. You got to know very well. He is now the leader of ISIS. Tell us a little bit about that.
No, you always regret the people that you didn't get. I mean, that was the nature of these deployments. We would go over there for a few months at a time. We would do everything we could to go after the bad guys, and they would keep us up at night. The guys that we missed, it would keep us up at night. And so when we'd go back home, we'd think about ways that maybe we could get to them during the next deployment. And so, you're right. You're right. The things I regret was that we didn't get enough of them. And to see that we were going after a group, really the origins of what ISIS is today. It's tough to see these individuals that are now out there and still leading these organizations that we helped put in prison originally, that were just released after U.S. troops left Iraq around 2011. So I do wish that we could have gotten more of those guys.
Oh, I like this question from an anonymous viewer here. What was your most stressful day on the job?
I mean, look, the people that are doing these operations, they never sleep. It is a 24/7 type of cycle. The times that we did sleep, we would, it wouldn't be much. It'd be a few hours at a time. And so, one of the most difficult pieces of that is constantly keeping up that pace 7 days a week for months at a time, and staying up 20, 22 hours a day, some days not even sleeping, and being able to still have that fresh mindset of being able to pick out these kind of anomalies that the drone might be, flying over or watching, because that was our job, was to really find these missing pieces of information that we could then use to put everything together. And so the hardest part of it was the fact that you're so tired, you're up, staring at screens, to the late hours of the night. I would come back from these deployments 50 to 60 pounds lighter. My face would be just, pasty white. People. I mean,
you're sitting in this room, this dimly lit room, all day long with a whole wall of televisions in front of you. I think we described it in the book as the shittiest Best Buy. And you're staring at these screens that are they're the cameras, feeding the camera streams into them, and you're watching, you're looking for these anomalies, you're watching these people, you're getting to know all these people that you've been following intimately. I mean, some of the most intimate details about these people's lives.
Well, I mean, think about all the things that people do when they don't think somebody else is watching. And in the case of a lot of these guys we were going after, we were watching what they did. And so, never before in the history of wars have we had this ability to know so much about our enemy, and that's one of the things that drones do. And so you do see a lot of these things that people do that you become very intimately familiar with how they think, how they move, who they're talking to, and in some cases,
what time they go to bed, what time they wake up in the morning, what time they walk their kid to school, or go meet their friend at the coffee shop, or where what store they go to pick up tea. It was just amazing to me that it was like this sort of dark version of the Truman Show, where night and day you're watching these people and trying to understand who they are and who their connections are and how you can get to the next important person.
Yep.
One other thing that you talk about these stressful days that I found particularly interesting was you're living in this box and you didn't sleep for hours and hours and hours and when you did sleep there was one time where you built a bed next to your station.
Well, the guys that I was with, the people that I worked with, they had built a bed, to be next to their computer station, and that's the type of people I worked with. I mean, these are the folks that were doing this job day in and day out. Is they would literally have engineers build beds next to their computers so that they didn't miss a thing when it came to watching these guys, and we would have them pipe the live feed of the drone. Even 1-2 a.m. in the morning, pipe it into our TVs in our rooms. So we would switch from Fox or CNN straight to this live drone feed, and that we would fall asleep to watching our targets. I mean, it's almost like a parent falling asleep to listening to their children. But it's a different type of way that we needed to just make sure that we weren't missing something. Because if we did miss something, we would run back to the operations center and figure out what to do about it.
Right, and just to remind people, you can ask questions, post them on Facebook. They'll come to us. You can also buy the book at buydronewarrior.com. We'll be here answering questions, talking to you, signing books. I want to find another question here. Let's see. Here's a very general question that might lead to others. What was it like doing what you did? And did you find it exciting? This is from David from Riverside, Ohio.
Thanks, David. Yes, I mean, it was one of the most exciting things that I've done in my life. Still, I think I'm trying to live up to that with some of the stuff I do in the business world with working with consumer drones and commercial drones. And, this adrenaline rush that you get seeing either operators on the ground that are out there going after these guys, or seeing knowing that the person you've just found is one of the most evil human beings on the planet, and there is this adrenaline rush to that. Even though you're sitting behind the screens, you're not the guy running into the hail of bullets or kicking down the door. There is still this constant adrenaline rush from doing these missions and knowing how important it is.
And while you may not be, out there kicking down the doors, you're the guy that finds the guy that sends out the guys who go kick down the doors, and you're watching. I mean, you're involved in when they're down there on the ground. You're watching every step. You're communicating with them. You're a part of that. I mean, you're a part of the mission from start to finish.
Yeah, the job doesn't end when we say yes. That leader of the Islamic State of Iraq is in that house. That's it. I mean, that's not how it works. Once they actually go in to capture the guy, then the drone is actually providing support around the area to make sure that the teams that are going into these missions are not compromised or have any enemy fighters that might be on the rooftops nearby. And so, and then on top of that, when they actually go and conduct these raids, to make sure that the target hasn't escaped somehow and maybe run out the back or run down the alleyway. And so that's what the drone does, is it provides this additional coverage for the guys so that they can ensure no one gets harmed.
And there's a lot of weight in the decisions that you make when so you find a guy after you've been chasing him for months, and ultimately there's this decision that needs to be made. Is this guy are you gonna hellfire him? Are you going to capture him? And if it's hellfiring, it's hellfiring. It's straightforward. If it's capturing, how is that going to be done? I mean, the whole, a lot of responsibilities on your shoulders.
Yeah, I mean, my responsibility was primarily with ensuring that the people that we were going after were bad enough to go after. That these were, in fact, bad people that we were expending resources to go, and the way we did that was through multiple sources of information that allowed us to understand, hey, look, this is definitely the individual we're hunting. Now, on top of that, there's this whole other military decision-making process that happens with a lot of people in the room that are making the decision on whether or not we should really go capture this guy, or whether or not it's not worth the risk to the forces. And so collectively as a group, we're talking about these things, but they know how much, whether or not we need information from an individual, whether or not that person can provide vital details on another guy that we're going after. And there's a lot of moving pieces to all of that.
I got another one here. Is there a psychological impact to fighting war remotely?
Of course there is. I mean, I think a lot of people say that you tend to, since you're behind the screen, you tend to not be as intimately involved if somebody was to be killed. And I kind of beg to differ, because with drones you're seeing multiple angles. Okay, this isn't some guy with a gray helmet in a trench that's 100 yards away. You don't know who he is. I mean, you know pretty much everything there is to know about these guys, and you're seeing them from different angles. So you're viewing death from a distance, but then on top of that, you're watching it close up, and you're watching the aftermath of it. And different people are traumatized in different ways. I feel like I came out of it fine, but more just an emotional kind of when you see so much death, how do you get back to how do you get in touch with your emotions again after that? And that was one thing my beautiful wife helped me out with. But again, people are traumatized in different ways, and I think certain folks are affected by it a lot more than others.
Because you got to a point where you were so numbed by numbed is a wrong word, but you separated your emotion from your job because it was a dated, you had to stay on just on every single day. But there was a stage in your work where you sort of lost sight of what death meant, or just sort of the emotional value of it. And you got a call at some point that a relative died, and hey, you should go back to the funeral. You spent time with this person as a kid, and what happened?
Well, what happens a lot. Family members pass away. I mean, it's life. In this particular case, it was a family member that was very close to me growing up, and where I really saw this kind of change in my mentality was putting the mission ahead of the people around me, putting the mission ahead of myself, and putting the mission ahead of family members back home. And so, even when
at the cost of everything.
At the cost of everything, because to me, it was more important that we hunted these guys down than it was, to see family that I would see at other times. And the guys that had been in this position before me told me, "Hey, listen, you might regret that. I've been through that. I know how you're feeling. Right. I get it. I get that this obsession with these targets that you have, because you know how important it is, the job that you're doing." And so it was a difficult decision. But at some point, we all sign up as soldiers. It doesn't matter if you're a chef or you're a Navy SEAL. It's as military members. You sign up knowing that you're giving yourself to a purpose that's larger than that, and unfortunately, families are affected every day because of those decisions.
Let's see a drone. You brought some drones along with you, right?
Yes, I'm glad you asked. So, if anyone out there is wondering what I actually do with my time when I'm not promoting books, I will tell you that.
Should I back up?
Well, I'm not going to fly this one because it could be a little dangerous, and I don't know how much hair you have left, so I don't want to cut it off, right? Okay. So we're going to keep this here for now. But one of the things that we do to make money essentially is we work with consumer drones, and so I have a couple businesses that deal in that space, and primarily we either sell drones, we repair them, or we consult with organizations that are looking to use them for very interesting ways. So we sell thousands of drones a year. And
what's so cool about this drone?
Well, this one's pretty sweet because it's made by a company called DJI. Some of you may even recognize this drone out there, but it's called the DJI Mavic. And what it is it's just essentially a handheld drone. It's got a 4K video camera on it, so it's got a really high definition camera here that is stabilized. Okay, so it's not like you're holding your cell phone and you're trying to take a nice video of your family. This is, even when it's flying 1,000 feet in the air, the drone can actually stabilize its camera and zoom in on different things. and it has the ability to fly, I think, 4.1 miles away from the remote. So something that small can fly a considerable distance, and it even has the ability to avoid obstacles. So it's got like these little sensors and cameras on the front of it. So if it's flying into you, it would either stop itself, or we could tell it to maneuver around you. And quite frankly, I mean, some of the tech now that's available on the open market is better than some of the smaller drones that we had in the military arsenal, and it's amazing how fast the technology is really.
So we're in New York City. Could I take this outside and fly it in Manhattan?
I mean, you could. You'd probably have handcuffs on you within a matter of minutes, because there are certain no-fly zones in the area, right? So you're not allowed to fly them very close to airports, and it actually has software on it. It has a geofencing software on it that it knows that if you're near an airport, it won't take off.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
So it knows when you're in these zones. Now, certain New York City with the skyline has a variety of different rules when it comes to air traffic, and the fact that something this small can fly so high. I mean, it could fly as high as a 747 that's taking off at LaGuardia, and so it scares a lot of people, is basically. And so the FAA has made rules to restrict their use of them because they are so powerful.
How hard is it to fly that?
I mean, this is easy. I mean, it comes with a remote like this. It's pretty sweet. You just pop this open. You add your iPad, so you've got your live video feed on it, and it's really stable. It flies itself. I mean, the natural state of drones like this or quadcopters is it'll just sit there, and it'll just sit there and hover until you tell it what to do. And that's here, in where we're at indoors, or it could be 500 feet away when you could barely see it, and it would still just hover until you told it what to do.
Yeah. What is that other one you got over there?
The other one is what's called a hover camera drone, and the reason I really like that one is because it's what they call like a selfie drone. It's people in the drone industry. This is drone industry speak now, not reporter speak. It's called a droney. You use a droney. So that's one of the whole reason for this type of drone is for it to basically follow you around. All right. So, and it looks like a book, right? When you look at this, everyone's always like, "Is this a drone?"
instead of those sticks that people walk around with, or all around Times Square, we're gonna have these sort of following everybody around.
Well, I mean, ideally, you could. I mean, it would be scary. I think if with enough drones, it would. NYPD is gonna have a field day. But ideally, yes, that's the idea. Is you put it up, it recognizes your face, and then it can actually follow you around. So you don't even you can be riding a bicycle down the street, and it'll sit there and just do its thing. So
the drone companion.
Yeah, that's basically what it is, and these can be purchased at mini stores.
Could you turn it on for a second?
Yeah, we can see what it does in here. See if it gives us any issues indoors. There we go.
So does it know you?
It's recognizing my face right now. So
if like you stood up, it would follow you around.
It could, See how it's moving with my face?
So how does it take a picture? How does that work?
So the way it takes a photo is it's tracked to my phone. So I can take a photo with my phone. See that? Pretty sweet, huh?
Yes.
That's the future.
That is cool.
That is the future. So again, it takes videos and photos with on an app on your phone. It's tracking my face as I move around, and it'll just sit there and hover until you tell it what to do.
I want one of those.
Well, you might be the new owner of one soon.
So again, send us questions. Go to buydronewarrior.com. Buy books. We're signing them now. Answering your questions. Let's see here. Well, since we're on this subject of consumer drones, where do you see this technology moving into the future, positive and negative? This is from Lori in Las Vegas.
Thanks, Lori.
She has there's a bit more here. My grandson in high school is interested in drones. What do you recommend? Well, start with the first one.
Okay, where do I see the industry going?
Where is this going in positive and then negatively?
So positively, I think we will see the day very soon where there's a drone per household. Just last year alone, there were like 3 million drones sold in the U.S., which is incredible. And all these different organizations, the Goldman Sachs of the world's predicted it's a $100 billion market, and so We will see drones doing things.
But what will they do at my house? Will they paint
They
my
can
house?
walk your dog, maybe. Who knows? I mean, so one of the things that my company did.
Probably don't need a dog with a drone.
No, that's what I'm saying. We're gonna make one so that it'll just take your dog out for you, and then let it do its thing, and it'll come back. But I've seen some wild things done with drones. Here's an example. One of the clients that we have for our company is a very well known beverage corporation, and we actually built them a drone cocktail bar that uses drones to mix drinks, shake drinks, and deliver them to people's tables. So literally the drones were delivering mixed drinks to people's tables. And we actually set it up inside the Renaissance Hotel in Midtown, and we did it indoors. And so when you think about this incredible amount of stuff that drones can do, I mean, we've got them delivering drinks. We're going to have them walking dogs. But right now the technology still has a long way to go. We got a long way to go before we see them swarming around doing all these things.
Before we get to the negative, we have Dennis on the line from Florida with a question.
Dennis, how's it going? This is Brett and Chris.
Yeah, Brett, how are you?
Hey, thanks for
Dennis.
tuning in.
Heard about your book today and ordered it, and I've been following this drone thing for quite some time and joking about when it would be in the agricultural industry, so I was curious what you think about that.
Well, thank you so much. What a great question, because I got to tell you, they predict, they being these analytic organizations, that agriculture is the #1 market for consumer drones, and that's because they believe farmers will be using these to spray pesticides, and there actually are some drones right now that you can buy that you can use to spray pesticides in the fields. We've had guys that have called us to buy drones to go look after their livestock. You'd be surprised. There's some videos online. You might have even seen them yourself where the drones are being used to move cattle around and things like that. And so in the agricultural space, I think that's one of the biggest markets for consumer drone technology. What do you think?
Yeah, I joke about it because I'm from the farm originally, but I've been in high technology for most of my life, and they keep getting the corn rows closer and closer together, and it's my opinion that one day they'll be able to mow down the corn stalks because they'll have them so close that they don't have to run a tractor down the rows by using drones to fertilize and do all the other things, and they'll just mow them down and figure a way to get the corn off the cob.
No, you're right. I mean, that's what these things can do. They're really force multipliers, so that doesn't mean they have to be some military killing machine. They can be used as a force for good and to help folks that may find interesting ways to use them, like you just said.
I haven't got your book yet. I was just impressed with what I saw, and I ordered it. How'd you do all this?
Well, it's just been a long ride. We were talking about that earlier here in the signing, and just how many years in the making this was, and just because of all the loopholes that we'd had to jump through to get it out there. And so it's been an interesting ride getting here. But I really hope you enjoy the book. It's a great read, and it ends on a good note, so it's got a happy ending. So definitely to read till the end, and you'll see some interesting ways that we're using drones today.
All right, very good. I know you got other calls, and I appreciate the help talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nice talking to you.
Thanks, Dennis.
Bye-bye.
So that was perfectly timed, because we were talking about the question in Las Vegas about sort of the positive future of drone technology, and so you were about to peel off and describe a little bit about sort of what you saw as the darker side of
the negatives.
Of the future.
The negatives are definitely that any type of sophisticated technology like this, anything that is as capable as some of the things I described, at some point it's going to be used for the wrong reasons, and the majority of people are not going to be using it for bad, but you have to worry about that. I mean, if you pull open the news, you'll see already that groups like ISIS are starting to take commercial drones because they know how cheap they are, how inexpensive they are, and looking to weaponize them. And that is one of the things that scares me, is these non-state actors, these organizations that don't have the budgets and the protocols that we would generally have in the U.S. government, and create essentially a drone strike capability with something that's very cheap, something you can buy from the hobby shop. And it used to not be the case that you could do that, a few years ago, but now the tech is so incredible that anyone can buy these things, and all it takes is one person to
How
create an
worried?
issue.
How worried do we have to be about? Okay, so we're on this island in Manhattan. Somebody sets up across the Hudson in New Jersey with 3-4 drones. They weaponize them. What's the chances of those things getting across the river and striking Manhattan?
Well, I mean, look, we could play Doomsday all day long. You could also probably do the same thing with a car or an actual fixed-wing plane. I think the issue happens when you've got, all these drones in the sky, and more drones than people know what to do with, being able to get across certain areas where the government can't tell what's happening. But I will tell you that the U.S. government's on it. I know for a fact, because I'm working with a bunch of folks that are looking at how to counter the use of drones for malicious ways, and NASA is building this entire drone, basically airspace, air traffic control that allows them to be able to tell where some of these smaller ones are, because at this point you really can't see it until potentially it's too late. And so from the negative side of the house, a lot of money now is starting to be spent on ways to counter this type of technology if it was to be used for bad.
Lori had one other question, which is her grandson is in high school and interested in drones. What do you recommend for learning his technology, learning about this technology in a part of classes?
Well, the thing I love about kids these days is that how quickly they embrace the tech, and I think they're going to grow up, especially the younger generation now, with drones in the classroom. One of the things we work on regularly are actually STEM programs. So one of the contracts we have is with the U.S. Army, where we're helping build out their basically creating these STEM programs that help them build race courses and promote the use of drones for kids. And so I think any STEM program that's out there, they're going to get a great deal of information out of using these smaller drones, figuring out how to pick them apart, because kids are going to grow up with these things like, I grew up with a cell phone or a beeper, or you grew up with a what?
Landline.
Yeah, there you go. So
Party line.
No, I mean we're gonna, and they're so smart. Like when you just hand them the drone, they can fly it around and have no problem. I'm always amazed by that because other people have issues.
So we're gonna have a change of pace here. We're gonna do something they call 22 questions in 2 minutes. That's a lot of questions in 2 minutes.
That is.
Okay, so I'll kick it off. This one's particularly appropriate because there's going to be a movie that's being talked about for this book right now. Michael Bay bought the rights to the book. The question is, so who would play you in a movie?
Well, I have no idea. I mean, I would say if you ask my mother, she would say I should play myself, but that just doesn't make any sense. Like it needs to be somebody that's young. It needs to be somebody that is a little bit wimpier.
We got 2 minutes. Who is it?
I don't know, Shia LaBeouf. He might be too old for it. I don't know.
Who inspires you most?
My wife. She's the greatest.
Who would you like to trade places with if you could?
I would trade places with the president.
Who was the last person you called or texted?
My mother.
Who is a fictional character you'd love to date?
What do you think?
Molly Bloom from Ulysses.
Thank you for saving me from that question.
What is your dream car? I like this one for you.
I would say a McLaren P1.
That's a sweet car. What is the last book you read?
Drone Warrior.
What one thing do you need to have in your fridge at all times?
Oh gosh, chocolate milk.
Chocolate milk.
Yeah.
What's your favorite pastime?
Watching movies.
Secret snack?
Snickers bar.
Rip It. What about Rip It energy
Well,
drinks?
yeah. I mean, I wish I could just have like a whole case of Rip It energy drinks just like sitting in the fridge, but they're hard to find when they're not in the war zones. So I stick with Monster or Rockstar.
What is the last gift you gave or received?
I gave a book.
What item would you love to get your hands on if it went up for auction?
Mona Lisa.
What is your first memory?
My first memory, gosh, California as a young kid going to school.
What was your favorite movie as a kid?
Batman.
The last movie you saw in theaters?
Transformers.
Michael Bay.
Yes.
What is one skill you wish you had?
I wish I could speak a lot more languages, like just
Like which one? What would
like
be
all of them.
What would be the first?
Probably Arabic.
Do you have any hidden talents?
No.
Or you're just not going to tell us? Where do you see yourself in 10 years?
Hopefully flying drones in Africa, saving wildlife
How do you take your coffee?
with cream and sugar.
Sugar. Where do you want to go that you've never been?
I would love to go to the Maldives.
It's a very nice place. I think we did it. Maybe we broke. I think we were a little over 2 minutes. But so we are answering questions. We're signing books. You can buy the book at buydronewarrior.com. Doing this for a little longer. So send us your questions.
All right, we got a whole stack of books to sign over
Yeah,
there,
we
bud.
do.
We
I
gotta
know.
get
I
to
know.
it.
We got to get moving here. I'm getting distracted by all these great questions. Okay. This is interesting. This is from Albert Wunsch. I'm probably mispronouncing your last name. From Englewood Cliffs. Albert. He says, if we accept drones as the latest weapon of choice by the military, what is the next weapon of the future?
Ooh, that's a good one, Albert.
Is that a trick
That's
question?
heavy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can see the day when drones are not used, but I would say, an adaptation of drones where we've got swarms of them thinking for themselves.
We already have that, right?
Okay, well then how
that's
about
AI,
here's
right?
here's the next one. No, it's robots. It's robot soldiers. Because they're already creating this AI around that. I could see the day when we actually, instead of sending real men and women in harm's way, we're sending robots on the ground.
That's terrifying.
Yes.
Okay. Keith says, Mr. Velicovich, thank you for taking care of me. Why, with all of our technology and people like you, don't we take out the leader of North Korea? There was a different word that was used for that leader of North Korea, but we won't use that here.
Why don't we do it? I think those are decisions made way above me. If it was my choice, we would.
Could you do it though? Could it be done?
I mean, of course it can be done. I mean, that's the reach of drones. We can fly them anywhere we want. It's just a matter of the U.S. government's policy and if they want to go about doing it and what are the after effects of it. That's always the decisions that we had to deal with. Is we can take this action now, but what are the long-term effects of that? Are we going to cause a war? Are we going to cause innocent lives to be lost? And I think in a situation like that, as much as we want that to happen, there are so many second and third order effects that would occur from it that the decision, it would be a very tough decision to do for sure.
I like this question. I'm not sure if we can give you we'll give you I think probably the PG version of this question.
Okay.
Or you'll probably provide the PG version of the answer of this question.
Okay.
This comes from an anonymous person. What's the most unexpected thing that you've seen a terrorist do while watching them from a drone? You have X-rated versions of this, R-rated versions of this.
Yes. No, to me it was always like the weirdest thing when I was tracking one individual and he's one of the most wanted terrorists in the world. And he just goes to the local ice cream shop and orders a vanilla soft serve cone. Because
you're expecting him to be conspiring against the world like night and day,
right? And those are the things that we kind of talk about it a little bit because we're like, it's a weird analogy, but it's you ever watch People's Magazine and it's always like stars are just like us. Well, I mean, when sometimes you see these guys in these really interesting you assume that they're out there plotting this evil, they're about to go kill someone, then they go just grab an ice cream and they go sit with their friends and they're getting the ice cream stuck in their beard. And so you see a lot of very interesting things, guys that would take their kids to to school or they would go to the store and have their kid popped a tire in their bicycle and they went to go help them,
Right.
pump air. I mean, just normal things. But when you think of how evil these people are and you read the reports about how evil they are, you start to, wonder, like, why aren't they doing all these evil things? And that also goes for the times that I saw the terrorists, like when I saw these guys after they were captured and I saw them in person, after I'd been watching them from above and then coming face to face with them after they have been captured and brought back. That also is like, you expect them to just be, as evil as that they are, but then they talk normal. They talk like everything's okay and that this is just normal. But then you realize very quickly that they value.
There's
death,
also a dark side of that too, right? You're watching these guys. You expect them to do evil things, and then they do things that you couldn't even imagine, right? Like there's a story of a guy who packs up a bunch of explosives with a kid in the car and takes it to the market.
Yeah, I mean, these are the types of evil folks that we were dealing with. I mean, they would use children as decoys. They would hide behind women and innocent civilians when they knew that they were being shot at, and they played by a different set of rules. And they had no qualms about any chance they got to kill Americans, kill women and children. They would take that chance. If it meant the greater goals for their organization. And so with this kind of humanity that you see, you also see the most evil side of human beings that's possible.
This is a great question, and it's something that we talk about in the book. There's a whole chapter devoted to this. Were there women in your elite organization?
Well, in the organizations that I supported, we were made up of different interagency components. So different intelligence agencies, different law enforcement agencies, and different groups within the military. And of course, there were women. One of the girls that we talk about, we actually talk about this group of women that were just as kind of hell-bent on going after the enemy as the guys were. And without them, we wouldn't have been able to accomplish the things we did. And so there are a ton of women.
We describe them as sort of the pink mafia.
Yeah, we describe in the book as the pink mafia because they were just they're interesting women and just very kind of aggressive and wanting to get after it, but also very, very smart too. I mean, they just brilliant minds. And we're surrounded by women, and it's a very professional environment, and it's just. I've worked with some of the most incredible girls.
But some
years.
of the women that you describe in the book were well, obviously they're as devoted as you, but some of them were just more determined than some of the others just to go after these people. And I just remember vividly just sort of some of these the scenes of these women who tirelessly, chased, doing detective work on figuring out, these unseen connections between the network.
Right. Well, they stayed up just as late as we did. I mean, sometimes I'd come back into the operations center. They'd be up, working away, trying to find that missing piece of information or filling in a gap that we needed. And, of course, when they saw the evil that we were going after, they were just as hungry to do something about it because they knew as well that we had collectively this power to actually do good. And so, of course, that drove them and it drove us, and that's what made it just a beautiful environment to work in.
This is something that worries me, and I've wondered about. Could the surveillance you did with drones overseas be happening on U.S. soil?
Could it happen? The thing about flying drones over U.S. soil is there really are so many different regulations that go into it because of privacy laws that exist.
Well, forget government. I think we're talking about government.
So, is there some secret organization just randomly flying predators around the U.S. type of conspiracy?
Any kind of surveillance.
No, I mean, look, the Border Patrol had drones. They were flying them along the border, so we know that they were using them in certain areas, along our soil. We work with different state parks, and we're flying drones. We're not necessarily spying on people. Those organizations are using drones to either look at wildlife or to study terrain or to do data analysis. And so, absolutely, government organizations are flying drones. They're not necessarily doing it in a way that's meant to be invading people's privacy, if that's what we're talking about here. But really, mostly the best drones in the U.S. government's arsenal are used overseas. They're not used for this domestic type of spying that people might assume.
Let's switch gears a little bit. What you're doing now, there's a person who wants to know, how does your wildlife conservation initiative work?
So that was a passion project of mine that we've had for a while, and there's still a lot of authorities that are involved in the particular drones that we want to use out there. And so
this is in Africa.
This is in Africa. So the way this whole thing came about was actually I was approached by a VC organization that wanted to fund technology solutions in these countries because they wanted to help conserve wildlife, and so they funded basically this startup program for us to figure out ways that we could bring tech like drones and bring them to an environment that could benefit from them. And so that's just one of the places that we're looking at adapting the tech to kind of go after these poachers and to really give these rangers on the ground that are out there, living in the bush, going after these guys, another surveillance capability that they wouldn't have otherwise had. But to do that, we have to do it the right way. We need the top of the line drones. We need stuff that to get approvals, from different organizations that let us take some of the stuff that I had access to.
Are there other humanitarian issues that might benefit?
The humanitarian issues are endless. I mean, we've got drones right now that are delivering medical aid in Rwanda. We've got the Facebooks of the world that are building drones that are allowing Wi-Fi and connecting different networks in countries that don't have access to the internet. Drones are being used for, to look at the illicit logging industry in the Amazon. We've got so many cases where we're seeing the use of these things for humanitarian purposes, and that is what I've dedicated the rest of my life to, is figuring out ways that we can create a positive impact on humanity through the use of drone technology. And so if you guys are out there, by the way, this is a message to everyone. If you guys are out there and you know of a project that you could benefit from drones that I could personally donate them to, let me know. I am looking for projects that I can fund with drones, or I can go out there and help people train them. I just did this in Somalia. I just went out there and helped the Somali police use drones to sniff out bombs along the road because those guys are out there, fighting Al-Shabaab still. And so I'm looking for projects where that can use this tech to help solve some of these more complex problems.
Amazon. How and when is Amazon going to deliver my groceries?
I think we're so far off. I mean, right now Amazon has to test those things in the UK because they can't get approval from the FAA.
Is that future possible?
Oh, of course it's possible. That's what they're going to. We were just here. We did the book launch event at the USS Intrepid, and they had one of the Amazon delivery drones right there in the drone museum, right? And you could see it there. It's ready to go. It's not a matter of can it fly? Can it do what it says it can do?
We're not talking about just your sort of your dinner. We're talking this thing can deliver bulk, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, a good example is one of the folks that I was just working with not too long ago. They had built a drone, and they're about to actually unveil it in San Francisco. They had built a drone that could carry up to a 700-pound payload. This has never been done.
That's Costco.
It's never been done before, as far as I know. And their whole idea is that it's going to basically be able to carry supplies from California to Hawaii and be able to carry packages. And I have yet to see a drone that could carry that much weight and still fly autonomously. And these guys have figured it out. And I know, I believe next month they'll be unveiling it out there at the harbor. So that is the future, and that's what it's going to. And it's just a matter of whether or not the regulation can get ahead of the technology, which is generally, not the case. And I think that's what we're talking about here.
Gotta pick it up.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm slowing down.
What about regulations? How regulated are drones? Do they need to be regulated more? I mean, where are we?
Yeah, I think collectively, when you talk to folks that are in the drone industry, executives that work for different software companies or people that are manufacturing drones, you would think that they would actually say less regulation, but the thing across the board is we need more regulation, and that's to ensure that there's safety with drone technology. That's to ensure that we've got a method, I guess, to the madness that is kind of the community now of consumer drones. And so I believe truly that we do need more regulation to make sure that it's done in the right way.
What do if I'm going to buy a drone? What sort of things do I have to think about? What do I have to worry about?
Well, you want to make sure you've got a drone that generally one of the what most people gravitate towards is a manufacturer called DJI. They're a Chinese manufacturer, but they do make hands down the best consumer drones out there on the market. And you want to look for one that has a camera stabilizer. You want to look for one that has sense and avoid technology. So like I was showing the one a second ago, the DJI Mavic, which actually has the obstacle avoidance, because a lot of the older models don't have that. And again, that's a safety feature. You want to look for ones that can return back to you if the battery dies, so that it doesn't crash, when the battery gets low. And then you really, in the end, you want to look for one that can go the distance in case you really want to take it out for a spin.
I have Aaron from Greenwell Springs, Louisiana here. Excuse me. He says, I'm a retired Army infantry and served with 520 infantry during the surge in Iraq, 2006, 2007.
Wow.
Are you hiring any veterans to work in East Africa doing wildlife conservation?
I am always looking for good veterans. Aaron, email me. I was in the 82nd Airborne during the surge, and I know very well some of the things that you went through. And please email me. I'd love to talk on how we can support the veterans. And we've got a lot of, if it's not Africa, it could be something else. We've got some other opportunities for you, so please let me know, and love to help out.
And, Karen from Petal, Mississippi says thank you for your service. David from Placerville, California wonders, I'm thinking of getting my degree before pursuing being a drone pilot. What do you think?
I think I think you can do them both in tangent. I think you can do them at the same time, because there really isn't this like official drone pilot school unless we're talking about, Predator, military, Air Force type drones. If you're talking about being a drone pilot and working for a company like Amazon, you can actually do that just by flying drones and consumer drones and learning, get your what's called a Part 107 license, which is basically the FAA is giving you a drone license to be able to fly them commercially, and so you can actually do them at the same time. I wouldn't say unless you are going. There are colleges now that are starting degrees in drone technology.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a few colleges that you can minor in unmanned, aerial systems, and that's because they see the future of this too. They see that people are hiring guys to work on drones, repair them. I mean, I have a whole group of employees that all they do all day long is they just repair crashed drones. That's all they do. And so there's a huge market for people, just like they are for buying them, that are crashing them. Just as many people are probably crashing them. So I would say you could do both, and you shouldn't have a problem. The test to get your license is relatively straightforward, and get out there and fly. I mean, that's really what you need to do the most, is just get your hands on the drones and get out there and fly as much as you can.
We're closing in here on the end. Almost done with these books. I have another question here. If you could choose anyone to work with side by side on a drone initiative, who would it be? Politically or otherwise?
I'd say hands down Jeff Bezos. I mean, he you can just tell he's got this mindset, like he wants to change the way drones. He wants to make drones change people's lives. I mean, and he has the power to do it. He's got the funding to do it too. So I'd love working with him.
He's got some drone. Obviously, the Amazon initiative. Is the other things going on as well?
Yeah, well, he's got the big spaceship that he's trying to send out there. But with all that kind of goes hand in hand. If you can build a spaceship, you can create make drones do things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. And so he's got a great mind for stuff like that. I'd love to work with him.
Okay, and this is the last question, and it's sort of going back. How did you get into drones? What led you to the decision to get into the Army and then into drones?
For me, it was the call to service of 9/11. When 9/11 happened, I was going through college, University of Houston. You know, the whole idea was I was going to work on Wall Street. I was going to be a banker. That was the plan. 9/11 happens, and I think like everyone, it upended our thought process. And for me in particular, it made me say like, what am I doing with my life? Like I feel like I should give back. And you know, it happened to be at the same time that I was looking for a career as well, and thinking about what to do. So I signed up, and I signed up in a way that the best way that I knew how, and that was through working within the intelligence corps for the Army, and not. You know, I wasn't the guy that was fighting people in school. I wasn't the big tough guy. Like for me, it was more about working on the intelligence side and kind of being more of the thinker when it comes to these things. And so that for the call to service for me it really was 9/11, because that's when I had just started out in school.
Let's see. If you want to buy the book, it's buydronewarrior.com. And I think we're at the end of the road here in terms of being able to ask questions.
Yeah.
I think we're done. I've been told that we're
out of time.
We're almost out of time here.
Wow, that was. We got a few more. We're gonna get to them all here by the end of this.
I think we're gonna get to most of them here.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in. I think we signing out now. Well, thank you guys for being a part of this and
for joining us.
Thank you so much for supporting us through this process. Appreciate
Drone
it.
Warrior.